This is Trend Following Radio, where great thinking comes alive. Nobel Prize winners, legendary traders, best-selling authors, and the pros that know what drive us irrational human beings. I am your host, Michael Covel. Not filtered, raw, honest. That's my passion. That's such a great scene from Patton. And I don't know, I'm sure people have got their own memories and likes and dislikes of that film and what's their favorite. That's easily my favorite. You know, I mean, obviously Patton's talking about reincarnation and he's been there before. I take out of it even something a tad bit different than that. I take out of it this persistence over time. He's essentially saying, I've been persistent over time in many life forms, but it's the persistency that grabs me. And as I start today and I talk about this notion of persistence, I want to use a personal example. So my sister sent me a clip the other day, video clip of my 8-year-old nephew playing football. First game of the season. And he looks like to be about a 50-yard touchdown, and he beat the other kids. He's a running back. He beat the other kids by a healthy distance, and he slowed up. And it's an impressive move for an 8-year-old boy who weighs 69 pounds to just lap everybody else on the field. I mean, it kind of looks like the type of thing you might see at the NFL level when a running back really just takes off and goes and leaves them in the dust. And so I see this, and my first thought is, well, my nephew has been driven since he was just a pup. I mean, I was around him extensively from up about the age of 4 and still see him multiple times a year. But this was the kid that once he saw Super Mario Brothers, he figured out how to win it as a 3-year-old. That kid would sit there and just figure it out. He wanted it bad. I can think back to his brother would be playing baseball, and there'd be, I think I tried to measure the length of the chain link fence that went around the entire perimeter of the ball field. I think it was about 1/3 of a mile. And I would tell my nephew, okay, I'll give you $1 for each time you run around the entire chain link fence perimeter. He'd do it like 10 times in a game. 10 times during his brother's baseball game, he would run around this thing. He was 3. I'd be paying him $1 a lap. But my sister, it's interesting. My sister says, well, no, this is genetic. These other kids can never do what her son does. He's got a genetic advantage. Well, yeah, Shaquille O'Neal has a genetic advantage. I'll grant you that. And maybe for my nephew, there is some small bit of genetic advantage. However, you can't discount the fact that when he was 3 years old, he was running 3 miles. Running around the ball field for an hour. Everyone else is sitting in the stands. There's this little 3-year-old kid just running laps. And then 5 years later, he's the fastest kid on the field. Is that genetic? I mean, there's some aspect to it. But there's plenty of people that have good genetics. This kid has drive. This kid has persistence. This kid wants to freaking win. That's when I started doing what I was doing. When I started trying to figure out this world, it was like, okay, this is it. I'm going to completely do this no matter what. And there was a great quote in Jim Rogers' book, Investment Biker. And he was quoting Bacon, I believe. And he said, any goal takes complete dedication. The sub 4-minute mile, the marathon, the building a business, Kirov ballerina takes complete dedication. And the quote that was in Rogers' book was that it's complete dedication that a wife and children are hostage to that dedication. I've somewhat lived that myself. I understand how that works. And clearly, life is all types of phases. And everyone goes through their own phases at their own time. But if there's that drive in you that wants to have that superstar achievement, something that just jumps off the page, you're running laps as a 3-year-old around the fence. You're not the other kid that's just sitting there with his juice box asking mommy to pet him. That's not what's going on. The kid that's going to win is probably throwing the juice box at you at 3. Okay, a slight tangent. But I think it's very important. The persistence aspect is extremely important. I want to open this up to kind of an interesting conversation that combines a couple different things. Partly an inspiration from the term managed futures, and partly some conversation from Ray Dalio of Bridgewater, the largest, most successful hedge fund in the planet. And but first off, I'm going to play a clip, and this is an exact voicemail that I received a good bit of years ago, 4 or 5 years ago, when Maria Bartiromo canceled an interview with me at the last minute. Now, I could care less about that. It was the voicemail explaining what the cancellation was about, and a cancellation that made absolutely no sense, which for those that are observant was the complete, transparent revealing that the talking head news folks are just that. They're teleprompter reading news folks that are paid to do that gig. They're not folks that really can just sit there and go and debate and have a true understanding with you. That's not their job. I'm not attempting by any stretch to belittle Maria Bartiromo's intelligence. I'm just pointing out that's a crazy voicemail. It's a crazy voicemail because it truly reveals how they think about what they do. It's just like if you were to watch the president, whichever president, at a news conference, and when he walks away from that podium and he walks back down that long aisle away from you in the White House, and it looks so stately and so presidential, and you're just thinking, maybe you're thinking happy thoughts, or maybe you're thinking, the awe and the pomp and the circumstance, and he walks that corner and he gets off the camera, and a bunch of little weenie political operatives come up to him and they start talking about polling, and they start talking about stuff that you'll never hear on TV, because that's what politicians do. It's all about the power. That's it. Slight tangent. So anyways, I'm going to play this voicemail from Maria Bartiromo that I put in my film. So just hold tight real quick.
You have 1 saved voice message. First saved voice message. Hi, Michael. This is Maria Bartiromo calling. How are you? Sorry I missed your call. I do apologize for having to cancel today. It's just that when I read through the details of the shoot, it just occurred to me that this is something different. I probably should not have said yes without having this stuff go through my PR people. I'm sorry about that, but given what's gone on and all the criticism of analysts and the .com boom and bust, I can't. I don't really want to do this open-ended without really knowing more details.
So that gives some perspective. Now I'm going to lead into something else that just came out in the last month, I believe. Maybe it's the last couple weeks, maybe the last couple days. It's an interview with Maria Bartiromo interviewing Ray Dalio. And I'm going to play this segment. Hold on one sec. Let me cue it up. I'm going to play this segment and just hold tight. Okay, let me play this segment really quick.
What we're trying to figure out is how worried are you about the current situation, and how much exposure do you want to have to gold versus equity versus real estate and other asset classes? Talk to us about that.
So I think I'm going to answer it in the following way that I think that is the right way for people to look at it. It's the way I look at it. I think that the first thing is you should have a strategic asset allocation mix that assumes that you don't know what the future is going to hold. And I think most people should, because, in other words, let's say, I play the game of betting against others. So it's like going on the poker table, and if I'm smarter than the other, and I know how difficult that game is. So very few winners, and you know, like if I'm not engrossed in it, and we're not engrossed in it, I'd be worrying about it, and I do worry about it when I am engrossed in it.
So I got a text message from this friend of mine, Andres, and he said, you know, I thought this would be of interest, and he sent along this. I actually watched this over the weekend too, and I think I caught this in the back of my mind, but I didn't make a note of it. And there's 3 things that Dalio goes into there in that brief clip. I think the first thing you should have is a strategic asset allocation mix that assumes you don't know what the future is going to hold. Well, that's trend following 101. Let's just put that aside for a second. He mentions poker. That was one of the great insights that I got in doing my film, is that all these great traders started talking about poker. Number 3, Dalio talks about the few big wins. Now let me add a little more to the Dalio conversation. As far as I know, and you know, this is the big mystery firm, okay? Look, I love the way the guy thinks, okay? And clearly he's had tremendous success. But I'm not afraid to point out some observations about what I see. And he has said that my firm is 100% systematic, using fundamental information, not technicals. So 100% information, not technicals. I just don't understand. It's hard to wrap your arms around that, because that means that he is taking a ton of fundamental information, coding it, developing rules around it for each particular market. So let's say he's got 20 fundamental variables for each market. They're going to be different for each market. He then has a computer system that's analyzing these data points, all these fundamental data points. And then from that, he's deducing a buy, sell, bet sizing strategy. And this clip, this video, he goes on to talk about how he normalizes risk as well. You know, the volatility between stocks and bonds are going to be different, so you're going to trade different amounts based on the volatility. Trend following 101. Am I saying Ray Dalio is a trend following trader? Ray Dalio says he's a systematic fundamental trader. He uses all these inputs of fundamental data to make buy and sell decisions and position sizing decisions. Or he could reduce it all to one variable, the price, and make decisions off that. Now, I say this with all due respect. When you're pitching a product to the Liechtenstein prince, and the guy's got a few extra dollars laying around, maybe it's old school, old family money. Stories go a long way. Just trying to tell somebody that you're playing a video game of betting on price movements, and you don't really have to know anything about those price movements to bet on them. That story still doesn't resonate widely with a lot of people. So, not saying Ray Dalio is a trend following trader, but you know what? No one really knows. And there's a lot of evidence that says some portion of his business is perhaps in the technical trend following space. That's just my opinion. Do I have any way to prove it? No. But he is a pretty honest guy. When he starts talking, he tells you what he's doing. The question is, are there some aspects that maybe might not make as much sense? So as I'm bringing up Dalio and his description of his business, I want to also think about another type of story. And this is the phrase managed futures. And managed futures is a phrase, a regulatory phrase that came along, I don't know, in the last 20 years. And it was to describe those traders which primarily trade futures markets regulated by the Commodity Futures Trading Commission. And of course, the phrase managed futures can mean anything. It's describing an instrument. It's not describing a strategy. And I've had debates with the highest reaches of the, quote, managed futures space on this issue. And I have to tell you, there are splits on this debate. And I should also say that when it comes to managed futures, once again, this is a regulatory term that's become a marketing term, which defines those traders which primarily trade futures. It does not delineate strategy, the strategy being employed in any way, shape, or form. So you could have, if you hear the phrase managed futures and you start to think, well, I know what that strategy is. No, you don't. There could be managed futures. The umbrella could have who knows how many different types of strategies. But here's the dirty little secret. Well, it's not really a dirty little secret. I think it's completely well known to anybody that's paying attention. However, the people that are hearing managed futures for the first time might not follow this. So the primary strategy of managed futures, the decades of track records, the performance, is trend following. It's trend following trading. So it's like saying, you see a baseball game, and instead of calling it a baseball game, you're just like, look at that sport. Look at the sport over there. Well, hold on. It's actually baseball. It's not just a sport. We can go a little bit further down the description path and call it what it is. So you have all of these trend following traders with great track records, a great strategy that makes sense, a strategy that's hunting for outliers, a strategy that's agnostic to why a market is going up or why a market is going down. It makes sense. It's got decades of proof. And then you have this phrase, managed futures, that allows other strategies that are not even trend following. They could be anything. It could be some guy with a 1-year track record, some kind of mean reversion, something that maybe isn't frankly as sound as trend following. And it kind of just gloms on to trend following. Now, I don't know. I've got my theories as to why this has happened. But it's happened. This is where it's at. So I just wanted to kind of give that little perspective about thinking for yourself and analyzing information. Because I always see people that come onto Facebook or something and they're like, well, these firms have got all these PhDs. I can't do anything because I don't have 100 PhDs and I'm just a single guy. Well, you know what? All the PhDs, that doesn't necessarily mean that they're being used for trading decisions. If you have 100 PhDs on staff, they're not sitting around tweaking a trend following system every day. That would be counter to the whole point of a trend following system. You develop the system, you believe in it, you execute it, you stick with it. You don't sit around and adjust it all day long with 100 PhDs. However, if you're running a massive multi-billion-dollar fund, there can be a lot of reasons why you might need PhDs. The average guy out there does not need a PhD to be a trend following trader. And if you've convinced yourself of that, hey, I'll make one guarantee to you right now that I guarantee will absolutely come true. Promise 100% beyond a shadow of a doubt. If you believe you need a PhD to become a trend following trader and you do not have one, you will never become a trend following trader. Guaranteed. I have to read something really quick. It's kind of a fun thing to interject in. It's an attitude adjustment cartoon that I've been using here for a couple months. And there's a little girl talking to this father, and he looks like the typical couch potato, kind of reading his newspaper. And she says, "Dad, how exactly does the stock market work?" And his response, not even really looking up at her, goes, "Well, you put your money into it, and for some reason you lose money, and then you panic and sell, and somebody smarter than you, they make all your money instead." And that's really the truth of it. That's the truth of the whole thing. And if you don't have a plan set up, you're going to be toast. And I'm pulling up something real quick just that I wanted to discuss. It's what I call, it's the process outcome chart. And I've talked about it in the past. Let me get this up real quick. Okay, here it is. So, and I did this gambling thing the other day with like problem gamblers, leisure gamblers, and expert gamblers. And it was kind of a little bit of a 6-square chart. And I want you to think about when I'm just leading up and having that conversation about Ray Dalio and talking about trend following. Yes, I'm painting a picture about how some of the mysterious marketing language perhaps gets thrown out there to the general public, and you have to have your eyes wide open to decipher it. What do the hieroglyphics actually mean? Are you sitting there unable to look at the data and look at the information and make a decision on your own? Or are you kind of like in your hero worship straitjacket, and whatever the hero says, you believe, just believe? So, but I'm very, I think all these guys, regardless of some of the marketing language, are fantastic people to learn from. And the free PDF on Dalio's site, where he talks about his business principles, is a must read, and you should go read that. It's just a very, very wise, grounded conversation. But I kind of want to end this with this process versus outcome chart. And I think I first saw this through Michael Mauboussin's work at Legg Mason, who has also got great stuff. If you should go find all of Michael Mauboussin's PDFs over the last 10 years and read them all, they're all great. Yes, some of them are fundamental, but the way he thinks, the way the issues that he outlines, thinking heuristically, making good decisions, thinking about chance, uncertainty, luck, probabilities, all good stuff. So anyways, this chart is really simple. On the left-hand side, it says the process used to make the decision, and the top it says outcome. And so you can either have a good process to make a decision or a bad process to make a decision. You can either have a good outcome or a bad outcome. So let's talk about the lottery, for example. You have a process to make a decision, and you're playing the lottery. Well, that's a bad process, okay? But your outcome can still be either good or bad. So if you use a bad process to make a decision and you have a good outcome, that's dumb luck. If you have a bad process to make a decision and you end up with a bad outcome, you lose all your money at the craps tables, that's poetic justice. You're just gambling anyways. You were going to lose it all anyways. Yes, you might have gotten dumb luck, and that might have rewarded your mental, thinking, oh, wow, this worked. I threw the dice and I won. I got lucky, and that must mean I'm special. But reality is usually a bad process will end up with a bad outcome, and that's poetic justice. Now, the other way to think about it is if you use a good process. And this is what Dalio was talking about. He made that comment. He's very clear. We're hunting for the big winners. So trend following, right? That's what trend following is doing too. And you're hunting for the big winners, right? So if you have a process to hunt for the big winners, then you can have either a good or a bad outcome. If you have a good outcome and you have from a good process, that's deserved success. That's what's to be expected. You have a good process, you have a good outcome, that's deserved success. That's fine. That's what you're shooting for. But remember, we're thinking probabilistically here too. You can also have a good process and a bad outcome. Good process, bad outcome. This right here is the crux of it. I think if they threw me on the boob tube and I was talking about this, I don't know how many people I could win over, and maybe I don't even have the best explanations. But you can't win every time, right? A good process to make a decision and a bad outcome is a bad break. It's not poetic justice. It's a bad break. You kind of expect it, right? Once again, venture capital firms, right? They're going to fund 19 projects and one of them is going to make, they're going to fund 20 projects and 19 of them are going to fail. But you're going to have one winner. It's going to pay for the losses. All those 19 that failed, they were the bad breaks. As a trend following trader, you're going to have 10 trades. 7 of them are going to be losses. Those are the bad breaks. Hollywood, they're going to go ahead and fund 10 films. 9 of them are going to crap out. One of them is going to be a winner. That's your deserved success. The others are just the bad breaks. You're counting on the bad breaks. You actually want the bad breaks to happen. If the bad breaks aren't happening, you might not have a good process. The bad breaks are just your stop losses getting hit. You got to have the bad breaks. No bad breaks, not a good process, at least from a trend following perspective. Now, the fun thing about this too is that there's a lot of people that will just immediately look at this chart and they're like, well, we just need to eliminate the bad breaks. We're going to have a process to make the decision that's good. And if we always have good outcomes, that's our deserved success. And we just eliminate the bad breaks. I had a long conversation with a very accomplished trend following trader the other day, a man with a track record of 25 years plus, who I've not mentioned recently. And we were talking about this very issue and this desire for people to eliminate volatility. Volatility is inherent in human nature, and whatever's inherent in human nature makes it onto the markets too. You're going to see that in the squiggly lines up and down. That's just the insanity of people manifested onto a price chart. That's all it is. So if you know people are kind of crazy and you know they're going to be kind of volatile, you can do something about it. And what you should do about it is not to try and compress it or change it or switch it to something else. Embrace it. Embrace it. Hug it. Love it. That's what it is. That's the reason you're going to be successful. That's the reason you're going to win. Is because you're not trying to change something that can't be changed. That's the home run. That's where you want to be. You want to be that person that says, yeah, human nature doesn't change. It doesn't change for thousands of years. We're the same people. We make the same decisions, or the vast majority of people make the same decisions. Markets are going to manifest that. There's going to be booms. There's going to be busts. There's going to be parabolic ups. There's going to be crashes. There's going to be sideways periods. What can you do? What process can you develop to find that? To close, to reiterate. The process that you can find is the way that Ray Dalio was talking, is the way trend following traders talk. Systematic process. Number one, systematic process. Number two, think like a poker player. Go look at those interviews with in my film, Broke the New American Dream. Look at those. Look at how they think. Look how they talk about poker. Number three, it's going to be home runs. That's going to be what you're going to make the money on. That doesn't mean you swing for the fence willy-nilly every time. No, you have a good process. But you're going to, the big money comes from the big moves. I had a conversation with Larry Hite the other day, and he was talking about this very issue. He's like, you just don't make the money scalping. He's like, you make it on the big hits. That's where it comes from. Hopefully something to think about today. Till next time. I see a time when those awake will understand how to make money in up, down, and surprise markets. Whether new trader or experienced, college student or financial advisor, protecting against a crash or just trying to make a lot of money, trend following offers everyone an answer in uncertain times. To get started immediately, send me an email, michael@covel.com. I will send you the right trend following steps to take along with my free video. But if you want to buy and hold, trust the government and trust Wall Street, this is absolutely not for you.